if it will go live.
It says live in the corner on mine.
Yeah, me too.
Oh. I think we're there.
Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Lythus, and I'm welcomed by some fantastic guests for the resurgence of the Indefinite Hiatus podcast. This is the 4th episode. It's been about 2.5 years since episode 3, so, who knows when episode 5 will come out, but I am joined by some fantastic people. We have Shay Geeks Out.
Hi.
Mama Loves Manga.
Hey, y'all.
And Simply G, or just Collecting G, or G.
Hi, everyone.
All right, so in this episode, we're going to discuss what we've been doing these past, quarantine, 2020 started off pretty crazy year, a bit cursed, if I do say so myself. It's been wild, and it's only half over, so who's to say what's going to happen for the latter half of the year, especially as the extremely hot months begin to transpire here in the northern hemisphere, unlike some of our friends in the southern hemisphere. Yeah, so I've been reading a lot of webcomics because normal manga is, physical, and distributing is not really happening a whole lot, though that seems to have picked up, and a lot of release dates got delayed. But yeah, I've been really enjoying a lot of webcomic series recently, and I thought we might want to share a few of those with you. A lot of them have been on Lesson or Webtoon for me. Do you guys have any that you've been particularly interested in recently?
I've been a Webtoon stan for years now, so I have my series that I follow all the time. I have a couple that I read on Tapas, not too many, usually because Tapas, when it comes to the explicit things, they're a little less strict than some of the other platforms, so I tend to go over there for those. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I've actually been behind on my webcomics. I do use Webtoons and I do use Tapas.
I have to ask before we get too much further, how far are you into Lore Olympus? Because they finished the first season of it, so that's why I'm asking.
Actually, I have to look, but because I have been using fast passes for that one, but I can't remember when I stopped. It's been a little bit since I've picked that one up.
It only recently finished its first season.
Okay, so
that's tough to go. I won't talk about it then. I was thinking about it.
Don't, because oh my gosh,
I won't. I don't want to
good.
spoil it.
It's so good. But I mean, I guess I could pull up my apps and see what all I'm reading. But yeah, I do use Tapas. I do use Webtoons, and I think I have an account at Lesson, and I've
been wanting to try Lesson. I just haven't yet.
I only have one. I think I've only read one series on there, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was a Yuri, and it had there was a woman who pretended to be maybe a detective or something.
The Love Doctor.
Yes, the Love Doctor, because she used to be a ballerina, and I really liked
that resonates with you a lot.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, so I really liked that one, but that's the only one I read there, now that I think about it. But yeah, I'm behind though anyway, so it doesn't really matter. What about you, G?
It has been a long while since I've read a webcomic, a webtoon, anything like that. I don't even think I have a webtoon account. I do have a Tapas account, and I do have a Lasian account, but I don't ever use it. And I only ever really follow a couple, sort of just normal, quote unquote, comics that are not really manga influenced comics on Tapas. Most notably being Heartstopper.
Oh, I love Heartstopper. It's so cute.
Yeah, so I haven't really been. I do follow some webcomics that have pardon me, their own websites and stuff. Mm-hmm. They're not hosted on apps and things. Ava's Demon's the big one for me, but I've fallen off of online reading and webcomic reading for a long time, just because I've been trying to focus on my other reading. I have a lot of other books to get through.
There's too much.
Yeah. The never-ending stacks that we all have.
Pretty much.
the to be read list only seems to grow. It never seems to shrink. Oh boy. But I've been reading a lot of Yuri on
Mhm.
Lesson because they kind of have a lot, and they have several explicit Yuri, which is not something you typically get. So
Mhm.
that was interesting. There's a lot of I've been trying to get these guys to read Moonlight Garden for a
Yes,
while
yeah.
now,
It's
and then
I'm planning on downloading the app soon. I just got a new phone, so I'm reloading all of my stuff onto my new phone.
heads
Then
up,
it's gonna happen.
there's two apps. There's the one in the App Store or the Play Store. That's the normal one, but you can't access any mature titles on it. I think it has to do with like App Store policy or something.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
if you don't have an Android, you can't get the app itself. You'd have to visit the website.
I have
But
an Android, so we're good.
you're good. Okay. Yeah. There's
Lucky.
instructions for installing it, but it's complicated.
I'm not gonna get into my Apple rant here, but I am an Android girl for a reason. We'll just put it that way.
I'm not a fan of Apple either, so you know you're in company.
Me and
And-
Lythus, we got it.
I'm one of those, like, I really don't care, and I just
Gotcha.
use whatever my husband tells me to use. He's like,
Gotcha.
here's this. And I'm like, thanks.
Yes,
Oh.
yes, we have.
We were just talking about that before the live
Yeah,
started.
before we jumped on here.
Yeah, wake up to 300 things being licensed. I care about probably 5 of them, but it's always interesting to see like what companies decide to grab what, and also like the larger trends of stuff being licensed too. I'm pretty interested in the Shirahama, the new series, or like a single volume by the Witch Hat Atelier.
Yes,
mangaka.
very interesting.
That looks really interesting. Seven Seas, I was excited for their licenses from the last couple of days. I haven't really caught up on what they licensed today. I just
I haven't looked too far into what they license, like what licenses they picked up.
Yeah.
I meant to go and look because they mentioned it in the stream. I'm like, oh, they've been doing stuff for days, and I had no clue. I only knew about the Seven Seas stuff, not the
Nakamura
stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Yuri from Seven Seas. I'm looking forward to Die Dark because I'm a big Q Hayashida fan. I've loved Dorohedoro, so I know that. I was like, yep, I hope someone licenses this, and I wasn't sure if anyone would, because not that Dorohedoro isn't popular, and it certainly is, I think, more popular now because of the Netflix anime,
Agreed.
but it's not always that we do get a mangaka's like follow-up work. And I'd heard pretty good things about Die Dark, so I was hyped for that.
Speaking of mangaka's follow-up work, we're getting Ray Koma's new title written in the same world as Dawn of the Arcana, and I am living my best life. I am so
I
excited.
saw that.
I'm like, yes, queen, give it.
I saw the what is it? The blurb for that, and I was like, wait, Ajin, is this also like part of Dawn of the Arcana, or is she just like particularly interested of this?
It takes place in the same world, but it's a different story.
Yeah,
so I don't know if there would be any correlation or not. Nobody knows.
She's obviously very attached to her
or spin-off. But that world was so interesting. It's a huge sandbox. I want her to play in it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of real potential with the ending of that series, especially with how it ended with the particular like Ajin storyline.
Wait,
I'm not gonna.
Okay.
No, I'm not gonna spoil it, but I am interested in like how it is gonna follow up with just the society with that and the magic and all that sort of thing. It's a great series. I think all of us have read it. I mean, you're currently reading it.
Yeah, I actually started collecting it at the beginning of it when it first started being released here in English. But then I kind of fell off of it. But I'm recently trying to get. Well, I'm trying to finish reading Cardcaptor Sakura, but I'm trying to get back into reading that because I wanted to finish it. And now that I know that there's a follow-up, that gives me more incentive to finish, because that's exciting.
Yeah, I think I first got the recommendation for that from Hiatus, so thanks for that.
Not a problem.
And I got the recommendation from G. So again, thank you. Half of what's on my shelf was recommended by G. Let's be real. Sometimes I would DM her, it's like, what do you recommend? And she'd send me a list. It's been a minute since I've asked for a list, though. And again, I just anxiously wait for every volume of A Bride Story to drop.
Yeah, volume 11.
My soul in the best way. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for volume 12. The cover just has me like living my best life.
It has the 2 girls on it.
Yep.
That's really
you need to get to volume 7, girl, so you know what we're talking about.
I need to.
I purposely made sure she got that bar.
I'm telling you, I've been so consumed with this clamp project of mine that like it's I can fit in like the Thursday, because like our Thirsty Thursday stuff is like
they're pretty casual. They're fun.
Yeah, when I read smut, it's like I can read that really quickly or whatever. But like reading, as much as I love clamp, I don't know that I would recommend for anyone to sit down and read all of their series. Like,
yeah, I actually thought about you, Ray, when I saw that license.
Gay Vampire. Wait, Gay Vampire? Is it a?
Yeah, there's a BL that comes out that's vampire centered. It's like kind of a
I
comedy.
didn't see that one.
I paid pretty close attention to most of the licenses. I was pretty bored this afternoon, if I'm honest. So I jumped on the actual live streams and I was like taking screenshots and stuff.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I really have missed out. I need to get
once this weekend's over, I plan on doing like a recap of all the titles I care about. So
I'll watch that. I'll watch that because we generally have at least relatively
similar taste.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen you read anything that I've. Well, okay, we do differ on age gap stories, but that's pretty much.
But that's a personal taste thing that we differ on,
right? And so.
But even then, there are some age gaps that I'm really not okay with.
Speaking of age gaps, how good is Takane and Hana? Because I ordered the first volume of that.
I adore Takane and Hana because it's more comedy centered and it stays more on the innocent side. Like it doesn't like force the relationship. It just kind of builds organically. They're really friends for quite a while before it really becomes romantic. I mean, it only really became romantic in the last volume or two, and I just read volume 15. So.
Gotcha.
But it's only got a couple more volumes before it's finished. I think it's done at 18 or 19.
Oh, wow.
Maybe 20. But yeah, it's wrapping up.
I've only read, I think surprise, I have definitely read the first volume. I think I read the second. A friend of mine who isn't a big manga reader had one day was like, hey, you need to read this with me. And so I read it and I was like, the premise is funny, but of course.
If you just go into it as a fun comedy, you'll enjoy it. If you expect anything serious out of it, you're not going to.
Right. Well, and for
it's
me,
meant to be a comedy.
It's great, but I was just like, I couldn't get past.
A lot of people can't get past the age gap because they have, I think it's a 12-year age gap between the two of them.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
And 12 years is not that bad. Like if you're both like,
but it's big when she's in high school and he's a grown adult with a job. Like it feels big at that point. So I get that.
Right. So I was like, ugh, it's funny, but I just couldn't get past the age. So I think I read.
And the funny thing is, the shorter age gap in Dream and Sun I didn't enjoy. So
I haven't. Wait, have I read Dream and Sun? I have not read Dream and Sun.
It's Ichigo Takano's second licensed work in the US.
Yeah, this is gonna sound bad. People are probably gonna like hate me for this, but I didn't love Orange enough to
try it.
Other works.
No,
I mean, personally,
I completely get not enjoying Orange. It is not a title for everybody.
I didn't hate it.
Right.
Personally, I found Becoming You or whatever the music.
I'm really excited
much,
for Become You. Yeah,
the first volume captured me a lot more than Orange did.
Okay. And I don't think we're getting another volume until like the end of this year. I'm like,
it's a very slow release schedule, but I really personally appreciated
Okay.
Become You more than Orange. Just from that first volume, I was like,
I would
dang, I'm
agree.
really caught up in this.
Okay. That's good to know. Maybe I'll give that one a try. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I read all of Orange and I didn't hate it, but it just
It
didn't
didn't
make me want to read anything
explore the
else.
mangaka anymore.
Yeah, but I would be willing to.
I've had
I
titles
could
where
be
it's like
off.
I've tried a mangaka and I'm like, I don't think
Mhm.
I'd really read anything more by this mangaka.
Right. Sometimes I've read things by a mangaka that I like loved, and then I read something else by them and didn't love it
And
as
you're
much.
like, what have I
I'm like
done?
thinking about Ouran High School Host Club and what's the other
Behind the scenes or
behind the
Millennium Snow?
scenes? Yeah, which Millennium Snow I love. And it's anyway, but yeah,
Behind
like
the scenes was, I feel like, more an exploration for Hatori personally, just to kind of explore a different arena. And you could see she was trying to take characters she had already created and kind of fit them into a mold, and it didn't quite work.
yeah,
But
I
will
was
still read other Hatori works if we ever get any more.
I think I would.
That if I were to rate Hatori works, if I'm honest here, because I'm a vampire, like I just love vampire crap. It's Millennium Snow, then Oran, then
Yeah.
That's how I would rank them currently.
I feel like I'm being really negative. I don't mean to. I think she's great. I think I have a soft spot for Oran, and also Millennium Snow, because I was one of the people that had to wait the decade for the second half of that series.
Oh, you did? I'm so glad I didn't have to wait. That would have gone crazy.
I started reading Oran really early on, like when it first started releasing, and while I think it was like somewhere in between Oran, I had found Millennium Snow and I was like, oh, well, this is by the same author. Like, I want to read this. And then Oran took off. And so she had to put Millennium Snow kind of aside. And then the next thing I know, like almost a decade has gone by and we finally get the. And I was like, oh, and then it's crazy because like the second half is so like it's better than the first half.
Yeah, it's a huge shift. It's a huge shift in the second half. I only read Millennium Snow recently because one of the libraries I frequent had the entire series, so that was good. It's an interesting, it's interesting to see how much that 10-year break allowed Hatori to kind of, I guess, sit with this idea and come back to the characters and reassess them. And like even in the author's note, she was like, "Yeah, I decided that I want to do something different with the series. So here you go."
It was very interesting seeing the differences and even the improvement in her art.
Oh, completely.
So I do have a soft spot for that, but I just don't know if I were to read something else by her, it would have to be something new. Like I wouldn't want to, like when I say new, like it can't be something that is similar to what she's already done. Because
can you pull up Ray's comment for me real quick like this? That last one. So I guess it is an indirect sequel, so we're not going to follow characters directly, but it's going to take place after the events of Dawn of America.
Okay.
So it'll be in the new society, we'll say. That's all we'll say.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I fully expected that. So that's good.
So speaking of Oran, I've read the first volume and I found it just like kind of okay. Does it get better as the series goes on, or is that like pretty?
I personally feel like the second half of Oran is way better than the first half.
I would agree. I think the first 9 volumes of the 18 is very like comedic. It doesn't really follow a timeline because like we want to do a spring like festival here, and then we want to do the
randomness
like jumps all over, and then once it gets to about volume 8, 9, it kind of starts becoming more of a story. Like it has a plot.
It's not just a fun expose anymore. It's an actual story.
And personally, like I started Oran via the anime. I think it's a great, and that kind of covers the entirety of the first half, really, which is all the comedic stuff. So if you can not to say like you have to read Oron, but like if you wanted to, I do think that the anime is a great way to start it. Maybe get the timing of the humor as well, because I find comedic manga can sometimes, if you're just reading it, you don't really get the jokes, or like the actual execution of the jokes can be a bit off. That was an issue I had with Nozaki-kun, which is a series I adore. But I think personally the anime is the better way to get into that. So then you have the timing for the jokes.
I would agree.
And then, but with Oron, if you wanted to watch that show, it does have an original ending, but it's not like out of place with the overall kind of tone of the thing. And then you can kind of just jump straight into the second half of the anime, mainly because the first half there's a lot of wacky hijinks. It kind of gives you the characters' personalities, a lot of their interpersonal relationships, whereas the second half is when it gets more dramatic and like learning all these sad backstories about these boys. So yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah,
but it is, I think Oron is sort of more. I feel like Oron is a little bit more, it's a classic series. I wouldn't say that it holds up 100% perfectly.
Oh, I would agree.
It's a more title that was great for its time, especially with playing around with the shoujo and like reverse harem tropes. But it is still like, I still find it funny. It has some problematic elements, but I do really like the cast, all of the cast, and I do really like a lot of the story progression, but it's not like a must read, especially if you're like a current new fan, shoujo fan.
I was just going to point that out. Like, Fruits Basket is very much the same way. There's a lot of problematic stuff in there, and terminology that should have been used, but at the time we weren't using that terminology. And I think they're really leveling a lot of that out with the new anime. Like, I feel like they've taken it and fleshed it out and made it a more cohesive story and kind of modernized some of it. And I think it's really well done. So for Fruits Basket, I honestly recommend the new anime rather than reading it, even though I love to read it.
Going back to Oran really quick, I mentioned that I don't think it gets better. And it's because I feel like from beginning to end, because I say fairly recently reread it. When did I reread it? Like last year, because
It's been within the last year because you did
I was a guest on Shoujo and Tell, and we talked about Oran, and I had reread the whole series then, and it was interesting rereading it because I remember the first time like I collected it as it was coming out, like I loved it so much, but then like sitting and having to read it and I procrastinate, so like a few days before I was supposed to be on this episode, I was like, wow, this was a choice. And I still have a lot of love for a lot of the characters, and I still enjoyed reading it for the most part, but I would say that it's not something that I would recommend just like willy-nilly. Like if you're really curious, I always say if you're really that curious, just read it and don't like take, anyone else's word for it, just read it. But if you're really like
if you're on the fence, you don't
if you're on the fence, if you've read the first like couple of volumes and you just really don't care that much, then I would say don't continue on with it, because I feel like a lot of times people will say, oh, it does get better later on, but it's like, listen, if it's not grabbing you in the first 2 to 3 volumes, there's no point in spending your money on the rest of it, because it honestly it's all mediocre, like, and it's all a product of its time. Does that make sense? I sound like I'm really bad.
No,
it does.
No,
and I
totally, it's the truth, though.
I would say that, like, even with my recommendation of like watching the anime then reading the manga. Sorry, my throat's all like a little bit weird. It's the beginning of winter here, so it's like waking up cold. But anyway. Hopefully that'll be fine now. But I do think that if you were wanting to do that, utilize your library. Like it's not I wouldn't be like, you have to buy the box set to get the whole series. No, you don't worry about it. Yes, they did, Rin.
Yeah,
a lot.
did.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
And Kyoya actually is my favorite. Kyoya and Haruhi are my favorite characters. I love them so much that I had so many like unpopular opinions in that episode of
I remember I listened to the whole thing.
yeah, people
And I
were
laughed
they're like,
so
wow.
hard.
It was like
We both ended up doing Disco Hatchery titles for them because I did.
yeah, because you did. Yeah, you did behind the scenes. Yeah, that was a really fun. And we did it was a 2-part episode.
I know.
Because we really had a lot to say, and like I said, I had a
Went
lot of
after it.
unpopular opinions. It was like, I'm just not. I don't see it for a lot of it. Like there are so many things, and I'm like, if you're a modern person, if you didn't read this before 2010, which is like basically when it was new still, you don't.
See, for me, Oron is one of those things that it's like a gateway for a lot of people because the Netflix has the anime and things. So it can get people into manga and anime. But then they get in there and they realize, oh yeah, it's not that good.
Yeah.
Very normie friendly.
Yes, very normie friendly.
Okay.
That and Death Note. Those are probably the biggest two to me that are normie friendly.
I don't know if I'd call it normie friendly because it does rely on the reverse harem stuff a lot for its comedy. I would say it's like it's a pretty solid classic like intro to shoujo anime. For a lot of people, that and Fruits Basket were like the mid 2000s gateway for a lot of guys to get into
one of the first shoujos I watched was Maid Sama, actually. Because I'm like,
but yeah,
is she in a maid outfit? I was just way too curious about it. I had to go explore.
See, I have dissenting opinions against you, Rain. But I do think that like Fruits Basket isn't a perfect series. Like it never is. But I think that there's a lot of popular opinion about that series, that negative popular opinion that is kind of unfair towards the series, mainly because of how it depicts trauma and depression and like dealing with and how the characters deal with that, and most notably like Toru. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding for Toru's character just because you see her as a very pleasant kind of wallflowery doormat type of character, and that's to me very purposeful in her not wanting to be rejected by another person or lose someone important to her. There's that. There's also like other. There's a lot of problematic shit in Fruits Basket. Don't get me wrong, but I do think there's a lot of negativity about Toru in particular that I find kind of unkind to how people deal with trauma and stuff. So it's interesting to see a lot of these old conversations come back up because of the new anime, and kind of frustrating because it's like, okay, we've heard your complaints the last 15 years, but like your opinion's not going to change, my opinion's not going to change, and I would hope that nowadays people are a little bit more understanding to characters who have, I guess, realistic trauma, because they do handle it quite realistically, especially with Toru's character and Kyo and Yuki, and all of them. I mean, Shiguro is terrible, and like there's a lot of bad characters in there.
I have to say, I love how they changed Shigure's tone in the new one, so that he's not just like this, weird little uncle almost kind of guy.
Well, I feel like Fruits, like the original Fruits Basket anime,
the tone that's right for him. Where it's true to the story.
The director is, I think, wasn't a good match for the first season of Fruits Basket, mainly because he is so comedically focused. One of his other titles, and one that I think is better suited to his tone, is Kami-sama Kiss. So like I feel like that works better for like his wacky comedic tone compared to Fruits Basket, which does have comedy, but it is much more like this dark dramatic character drama. So it's interesting, and I think obviously that's one of the larger reasons as to why it's taken so long for this anime to be made, because Takuya wanted more creative control because of those changes. So,
Right.
yeah.
Gotta love when the mangaka wants to be directly related, so the story.
So, as someone who's neither watched nor read Fruits Basket, would you
Mhm.
consider it one of those like must-read and like super important sort of
Um,
to the industry, or is it more of like a one that like you could skip on?
so Fruits Basket was my first manga. I was in, how old was I? 20 or 21, 20 or 21 when I first started reading it and when I first discovered manga. So I do have like a huge soft spot for it. It was the first manga that I'd ever like completed collecting and all of that jazz. Like I followed it pretty early on. I started reading manga in 2006, if that tells you anything. And so I did read it. I reread it a couple of years ago. I actually have a video on my channel where I had like written like a diary thing. Oh, that was so lame. But anyway, so I do have a very soft spot for Fruits Basket. However, and I think I'm like this with most manga, I'm not a super there are very few manga that I just absolutely stand for to the point where I would tell someone that it's important and you have to read it. I don't think that you have to read Fruits Basket in order to be a fan of manga or to understand manga, because they're like Fruits Basket is the product of even greater or I guess like not product, but like what's the word I'm looking for? Descendant, I guess, of even greater manga that's older, especially within shoujo. Gee, I know you and Shay, we already know. we are we already know. So I feel like if you're gonna look for a shoujo that's like or shoujo, a time frame of shoujo that you should read.
It's the really old stuff.
Yes, I mean the Rose of Versailles, which
And
like the
Rose of
Postman,
Versailles,
all of those
Rose
kinds
of
of things.
Versailles holds up as well. Like I read the first volume
Oh,
recently,
yeah.
and I was like,
Oh my
"That's
God.
it's still really good."
The Postman holds up really nicely too.
the Poe clan, like basically, I mean, I have a whole shelf of Moto Hagio stuff, and also I have my Ryoko Ikeda. Actually, you can see it. That's back there. So those to me are very like, especially if you're wanting to get into shoujo, those to me are must reads. But Fruits Basket, again, I have a very soft spot, a very big soft spot for it, and I think if your library has it, then definitely give it a read. I mean, it's also kind of, I mean, it's 23 volumes. Like,
it's long.
It's relatively long. So I don't know. There's just other things that I think that are better and even older. Like when we talk about things being a product of their time, it's interesting that older things in Fruits Basket, I think, hold up better.
Except Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon does not hold up ever.
Oh,
Sailor Moon does not hold up.
No, it doesn't.
I am reading it for the first time.
Filled reaction blog about that if you want to know.
I'm reading it for the first time, and I'm like,
yeah, it doesn't hold up.
This is old.
And I'm sorry, like he is the worst boyfriend ever. I don't care what anybody says. He's not a good boyfriend in any way, shape, or form.
She's 14.
You cannot convince me about this.
I mean, at least he's 17 in the manga and not like an actual college student that they changed in the anime for some reason. I don't know, but I feel like
she is a child. This is not okay.
Yeah, but I feel it's written for 14-year-olds, and when you are 14, you want a cool older boyfriend.
Yes,
and the idea of like having a faded, love match is like, oh my god, it's so romantic, it's so amazing. You don't think about like it's kind of inappropriate that a 17-year-old is trying to date me.
Right.
And I think I
Exactly.
say that I feel that way with a lot of like older shoujo titles, which I personally don't like because it's like a 15 or 16-year-old dating a 21-year-old. But it is like, you have to remember, this is
That
wish
is ri-
fulfillment for teenage girls who,
Yes.
when you are that age, you're like, oh, I want a cool older boyfriend.
Yes,
I don't
absolutely.
care like what
I
my
never
parents
wanted
think
the
they're
cool older
lame.
boyfriend.
But it's for the majority of people, and in the 2000s we weren't as hyper aware about that, especially like
Oh,
young
absolutely
people
not.
weren't as hyper
Right.
aware of that.
Yeah.
So it's now it's like a lot of titles, Dengeki Daisy and stuff like that. They don't. I mean, I wouldn't want a child to be reading that and being like, "Yes, I want a 25-year-old boyfriend."
Right.
Then here I am reading Takane and Hana with an even bigger age gap than that. So
exactly.
I have no room to talk on that platform.
But you're also an adult. Like,
I am. I'm an adult.
And
It's different for an adult to read something like that and know that it's fiction, and it's another thing for a teenager to read it and think that that can be their reality.
right.
I think that there's always going to be an element, especially in shoujo manga for teenage girls, of being wish fulfillment for teenage girls.
Yes.
And teenage girls are generally mentally a little bit more mature than their counterparts, the guys that they're surrounded with. Because I know from my experience in high school, I wouldn't have wanted to date a boy in my year because they were all idiots. I just was like,
yeah,
they're not interested. I kind of just didn't date at all. But in saying that, a lot of girls
boyfriend until I was a senior. So
and a lot of girls do, and they date, a couple years older than them. So it's not unreasonable that, you can, in manga, where age is such like a wibbly wobbly thing, because 14-year-olds don't act like 14-year-olds in manga either, or 15-year-olds. So it's really like, I'm not saying yes, more inappropriate age gaps, but I do think like you gotta keep in mind like who this audience is a lot of the time.
Yes, I love that you mentioned that, because I actually was thinking about that, about age gaps and stuff, while I've been reading volume 7 of Ron and the Grey World. And I was thinking about how, like, as much as I hate a certain character, I'm trying not to make it because I know that life hasn't gotten this far, but as much as I hate a certain character, it makes sense that Ron feels the way that she does, because she is a child. And so I can't even be upset with her, because she's doing what she's doing what children do. She's looking for attention and love, and kids are gonna take it where they can get it. Trust me, as the mother of 2 children, kids will take love and attention wherever they can get it. Thankfully, luckily for my children, they get plenty of love and attention from their mama, which I get on their nerves. I'm just like, I will love you so that you don't have to go and search for it in awful places. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, basically what I'm saying is that there are certain things that I can totally see being realistic for young characters, but also sometimes, like, especially with the newer stuff, I don't want to tell kids to go and read that and be like, hey guys, this is a good blueprint.
This is normal behavior for 14-year-olds.
Right. Because it's not. I mean, considering my oldest is actually 14, so he's in that age range. And let me tell you, they're definitely in this weird space of like being children, but also
not
entering into adult. It's a weird stage, and sometimes he says things and I'm like, that's inappropriate.
That know enough to get themselves in trouble, but not enough to dig themselves out.
I'm not going to ground you because I know that you're learning. I'm not going to shame you, but maybe don't tell us. Like, don't say those things. Like, it's Ugh, teenagers, man.
Mm.
Oh goodness. I don't know. Is there anything else that we want to?
Yeah, Rin mentioned Skip
Yeah.
Beat does hold up well.
Oh.
I've read the first 3 volumes of the first 3 volumes of that, and I do want to continue. I did finally decide I just need to collect it, and it's crazy long, so it's going to be a long
Yeah.
journey.
Is it the longest
Well-
series Shoujo Beat has released in English?
Yes.
I
Yes,
think
it is.
so.
I think the 44th volume is
Oh my
coming out
gosh.
in the next couple months, which means that it's officially longer than Kaze Hikaru, which I don't know when we'll get to volume 44.
They
of
release
that
one
because it's
volume,
such a
what, every 6
every-
months?
10 months. Not even
10
6.
months?
It's like once a year. Once a year we get a Kaze Hikaru volume.
Is that like a
I think it's only once a year.
contract thing, or is that just...
Yeah, well, I've spoken about it before, and I think it was licensed during a period because it was sort of the GFC, and there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a contractual obligation for Viz to finish it. I feel the same way. We know that that's the case for Hayate Combat Butler, which is like 37, because I don't know anyone who is buying that or reading it, but we got the entire 37 or whatever volumes of that. And I don't think that's something that happens now anymore, but
No.
at the time, because of just the way of the world, companies were, I guess, putting that clause into their contracts. Not that I think any company license something expecting it not to sell, but when you consider that like titles that I think nowadays would be a lot more popular, like Gintama, and that did get dropped very early or midway through their release, Hitman Reborn, that other one, were dropped. The fact that Kaze Hikaru is still being released when up until I was talking about it, I really never saw many people talk about it at all. Is
I don't
kind
even
of
know what it is.
It's great. It's really good. It's historical fiction romance based during the kind of isolationist period in Japan, and it's got a girl who is... It's like a Mulan story. She goes into the Shinsengumi to get revenge for the murder of her brother and father.
I can dig that. I might have to
And
investigate
she falls in love with Okita Soji, who is a beautiful young man in this, rather than full head of hair comparatively to how historically it would have been. And it is like it's very focused on the history, but I do think that Sei and the rest have a great dynamic. It's very funny. I do think it's an older series that ran from the early 90s to like just this last year. So some of the humor is a little bit like, oh, I don't know if you can joke about that anymore.
Right.
But ultimately, like overall, it is a good time. And if you do like historical fiction and romance fiction, then yeah, jump on it. It's pretty good. And it is kind of the earlier parts are going out of print, so I'd say maybe get it whilst you still can, because
volumes are expensive.
I got
right
my
now.
tax return money. I can I'll be fine.
We have 27 of the 44 volumes released. So yeah.
So that's so many.
So many volumes. But then the skip beat is ongoing and at 44 volumes, and I'm like, I know that I'm usually like, I don't tend to collect longer series like you, especially Aisha. It's just not, I don't have the time or space. But there are some. I
have a couple of long series that I collect.
Yeah, there's some exceptions.
Yes, I'm collecting it because I know.
Yeah, there's some exceptions. And Skip Beat is like, it's just so funny, and I really like the characters. And yeah, Ren is 21, and what's her name? Kyoko is like 16, 17. But they're not actually dating right now. And that's fine. Like, there's romantic interest there, but
I do think there's definitely a difference between like a 16 or a 17-year-old and a
14-year-old. Agreed.
Yeah.
And especially in a historical setting.
And again, for Skip Beat, I feel like there's so much other, like, it is legitimately really funny. It's a really, like, interesting breakdown and comedic insight into, like, the talent industry. And it doesn't really focus in on the romance stuff until way later, where you're more comfortable with the characters.
Right.
Again, maybe that's insidious, but like, I don't care. I just like the characters, and it is really like I watched the anime first and then read the manga, and the anime from like episode 1, like 5 minutes into episode 1, I'm like, yep, I'm here for it. This is great. And Kyoko is a great protagonist. I feel she's got a lot of spunk, she's got a lot of spine, she stands up for herself, but she's compassionate and invested in other people, despite her like spitting her revenge against the boy who shirked her and trying to prove him wrong. Right. It's just I think it's a great title for teenage girls, that like you can stand up for yourself and you can achieve things regardless of who tells you like you can't.
I think Skip Beat didn't start releasing in English around the same not too long after I started reading manga, I think. Like early
time-wise, that would sound about right.
Probably, yeah.
I think so, because I feel like I remember seeing it in bookstores, but like I was very we were poor back in those
Release date
days.
July 5th, 2006.
Okay, that's
right
around around the same time, and I remember seeing it. But like, I never picked it up because like at the time I was poor and could only afford like to follow 1 or 2 series at a time. And so it's just, there are a lot of titles that came from that era that I actually missed because I had to be selective about like what I was reading. So I feel like Skip Beat is definitely something that I would have loved, especially back then, because I was reading Fruits Basket, Oran, SA or Special A was one that I really liked. And of course, then you get into your Vampire Knights and your things like that. But like, I feel like Skip Beat was definitely one that I would have loved. I just kind of missed out on it. And at this point, I don't know. Lita actually sent me the first omnibus of it. I haven't started reading it because I don't want to love it, and I'm not collecting it. I don't want to do it. I don't know. That's just so many volumes.
Yeah, but just think about One Piece being more than twice as long.
And I will never touch it. And I think I've stepped on some
toes. Like, nope, no more One Piece.
No,
never.
I will not. I will never. People have like started following me.
And again, I never thought I would finish physically collecting Haikyuu. Yeah, I've just done a ton of
Haikyuu is wonderful.
I love Haikyuu. It's a mood in a moment, and there's going to be like a whole expose on my channel as soon as that final chapter drops. So be prepared.
Haikyuu is wonderful. That's yes, and yes, that was shade. Because Haikyuu, yes. I'm not going to say anything else because I don't want to step on anyone's toes.
I will
step
say
on as many toes as you like.
I'm just not. One Piece is just not. It is not my. No.
Before I start talking about One Piece, I will say for Skip Beat, I do think that the art is like kind of rough, and it just never. You feel like it gets better, and then you're like, oh, this is better, and then it'll be like one panel, and an arm is like way too long for what it is, and you're like, oh, well, no, that's not okay. Back to this. But regardless, again, very funny. But going to your point as to like Haikyuu versus like One Piece and all that, as someone who adores Haikyuu, I think it's, it's my favorite thing in Jump, aside from Hunter x Hunter, personally.
And it's ending.
Yeah, and it's finishing very soon, next couple weeks. Well, I mean, supposedly, under suspicion.
I think the canon story will end, and there will probably be like epilogue-style stories afterwards.
I mean, we're kind of in an entire epilogue arc, to be fair, so I don't know how much that will happen. But regardless,
people are demanding Olympic-related things. I think we'll at least get a panel or two, if not a small story afterwards.
I don't. I honestly, I don't want
think I
Furuta
need it
to
personally,
listen.
but
Yeah, if mangaka listened to the fans, I wouldn't necessarily be as much of a manga fan as I am, because fans don't know what they want, honestly. Let a creator tell the story they want to tell. But okay, Haikyuu, love it. Favorite thing, adore it. Cry every week when the new chapter drops.
Oh, me too.
You know this. I talk about. I
We
tweet
see
about
it.
it all
Yes.
the time. Yes, I am no. Don't hide it. But I have been reading One Piece on the
I knew that.
Jump
Yeah.
app.
Mhm.
I tried to get back into it this week and fell asleep three chapters in. Because the thing about One Piece, the thing about One Piece is it's like the art is so dense, and I don't know whether it's like me reading it via the app or what, because I do see people like talk about this, but fans never talk about the fact that like there's a lot going on in every single panel of One Piece. And don't get me wrong, I do think One Piece is a fun time. If you're a 12-year-old boy wanting a fun adventure story, it is great. And it's great, and I actually do like the cast. I think Luffy is a fun protagonist. I think all the like main cast is very fun, but like as a 27-year-old woman, it's not going to become like my ultimate favorite thing. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive, because there are a lot of people in their 20s or 30s, 40s who love One Piece, and it is their favorite series. But I don't know. I think Oda is brilliant in how he has such an open-ended story. There's so much you can explore with it. There's a lot of creativity in there. I've only read 600 something chapters. Only. I mean, that's
right. Yeah.
But that's saying like I'm at volume 60 of like a 98 or 93 volume series. I'm about 2/3 of the way through, and I've really hit the time skip. There's a time jump in the middle of One Piece. And since the time jump, I kind of don't care as much as I did. I mean, I burnt out on One Piece anyway. I feel like also one of my issues is that I didn't avoid spoilers for One Piece because I never expected to watch or read it. And so a lot of the like hard-hitting emotional things, I'm like, oh yeah, I knew that. Like I was expecting that. I knew this was coming. And it's not, and so that kind of took a lot of the impact out of my, like the wind out of the sails for me. And yeah, I mean, Melison's comment, I think that there's definitely a trend. There's two sides. There's people who definitely care about the characters, and there's people who definitely care about the lore, and all of that. And I think there's great things about both of them, but for me, it's just like so much going on. So just art-wise, it hurts my eyes to try and read it. And I saw I had a pretty funny response tweet to me saying that it was like, if you took a chapter of One Piece and you took a chapter of Bleach and they had a baby, then you'd have like the perfect amount of background.
Because Bleach's panels are pretty like sparse from what I remember.
Sparse, exactly. So
I've not read.
It's the perfect balance. No, I've only read in this quarantine. Speaking of, this is kind of a good jumping off point. I've been reading a lot of the Shonen Jump stuff during this quarantine because I have the time. And a lot of these are classics that are like, nostalgic for a lot of people. Naruto being the big one. And it was fine. Like I enjoyed a lot of it. The ending was terrible. That one's one that was like, that really was hurt by becoming super popular and getting as long as it was. I haven't touched any like the spin. I don't care about Boruto. I'm not going to read that.
I don't even think the fans care about Boruto.
It's just funny because on the Viz panel today for the licenses, they did this whole like Naruto Boruto thing before they got into the manga licenses. And so everybody's like, get them to shut up. We want other stuff. It was like so bad in the comments. I felt so bad.
Yeah. I feel really sad that Kishimoto can't seem to get out. Not that he writes it, but he can't get out of that popularity of Naruto, and nothing will ever live up to that. I mean, maybe prove me wrong, but his other series is only 5 volumes long because it didn't,
Mhm.
you know, it didn't really work. Also, so I read that. I read Promised Neverland, or I finished Promised Neverland because I was about halfway through that. I read the rest of the like 120 chapters of Demon Slayer that I had to read. And I like Demon Slayer a lot. I know some people are like, it's sort of middle of the road. No, I liked it a lot. I find the family aspect of that series really refreshing and nice. And plus, you know me, I'm into like yokai and monsters and weird shit.
Yeah.
And what else? I don't remember, but that's kind of like the big long stuff. And now I'm trying to ease myself back into One Piece, and I'm like, that didn't work too well.
Right.
And it's not for lack of want to keep reading, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, oh, this is interesting, I want to read it, but it just, I can't read more than 3 chapters, I find, which sucks because it's a 900 something chapter series.
Oh and I want to say that I'm not saying that, like, just for anyone watching, I'm not saying that One Piece is bad. You will very rarely hear me say that a series is bad, because I fully believe that a lot of that while there are some things within like manga that can sort of be objective, for the most part, it's subjective. Like something that like outside of like technical things, like it's very subjective. And so I'm not saying that it's bad. It's just, considering my age range and the fact that, you know, I do have 2 kids, and I have Animal Crossing and other things to read. I just don't read, like, I have to really focus my energy on things that I'm very interested in. And One Piece just in general doesn't interest me. Like, there's nothing wrong with it from what I can, like, as far as the idea behind it, but it just isn't something that grabbed me. And the art style, that's a big thing. As someone who is a fan of Clamp, Fumi Yoshinaga, you know, like, if you know who my favorites are, like, you know that art style is important. And I'm not a fan of the way One Piece looks. Although there is one female character that's kind of hot, and I can't remember her name, but I think
the only characters I know is there's a guy named Luffy and there's a guy named Robin.
No, there's Robin's a girl, first off, and there's Robin. There's also Nami, who's like the main. I mean, they're both Straw Hats. They're both in the
because like all I know is I think Viz like tweeted a thing about her or something, and I was like, oh, she's hot.
It was Nami's birthday recently, so probably not.
It's Nami's birthday.
Okay.
Today.
Or
yesterday.
That makes sense, because I was like,
And see, I love Sanji. Like, I think he's great. I really like him as a character. With what I've gotten into One Piece, which isn't very far.
The lech of the group, the ladies man.
The ladies man, the pervert, the one who's always flirting with everybody. I love him.
Listen, Animal Crossing has been everything to me lately.
It's true. It has. I know how many hours you put into that.
Yeah. I've put in. To be fair to myself, I didn't just like, it wasn't just me sitting and playing by myself. Like, I have several different groups of people that I play with. I'm so obsessed. I even had my birthday party in Animal Crossing.
I remember because I was there.
Yeah. So some of my like in real life really good friends who I can't obviously see in real life, they had come over and we had a birthday party for me. And then Shay and Dylan and Melissa came over later. So I mean, I really celebrated my entire 34th birthday in my Animal Crossing island, and it was everything, and I love it so much. But it is really disrupting my reading, and I've got to with this new update.
I know, right?
I stayed up so late last night swimming. I've been wanting to swim in that game since the beginning. I was like, why can't I get in the ocean? In real life,
Now you can.
In real life, I don't get in the ocean, but in my game, y'all, I
Where
love
you
it.
don't
Don't
have
get
to
me
actually
started.
get wet and feel the slimy water.
Oh gosh, ugh, I'm not.
Where are you living where your water is slimy? I don't know. That's weird, guys.
There's a really polluted lake near where I live, and the water feels pretty bad. I've only been in it like twice in my entire life.
Really gross.
See, I
There
live.
was a steel plant that literally dumped all their like toxic waste into this lake.
Ew. See, I live on the coast, so I'm used to the beach and going to the beach, and we care about our beaches, so they're relatively clean. I haven't played any Animal Crossing because I do not own anything. Like I don't own a Switch. I can't really justify the cost to myself, even though I know it's going to be fun. But I will say, with the last update, like the summertime, like, oh yeah, go swim and all of that, it was trending on Australian Twitter because everyone's like, yeah, just go swim. And then it was like all these photos of people in snow, like in their little bathing suit.
Oh, that's adorable. It's winter.
Yeah.
Because it's winter in the southern hemisphere.
That's so not that it snows here much, but it's like that same. Nobody goes to the beach. Well, you can go to the beach right now, but you'd be cold.
Right. That's actually that's hilarious. Oh my god. I mean, I live in Oklahoma. Like I live in sort of this. I call it the South Light because depending on who you ask, somebody's going to tell you that it's not the South. It's the South. People act like it's the South, and it feels like the South, so it's the South. But we have lakes, mostly like man-made lakes, and our lakes are actually relatively clean. I'm just not a lake person, because everyone, like, when they do gather at the lake, everyone's
when I
just
get in the water,
bunch of drunk hillbillies.
The canyon.
Yeah,
I go to the nice water. I don't get in the toxic lake.
See, you guys need to come visit me, and then I can take you to some beaches and like get all of these weird lakes.
When was the last time I went to the beach?
Out of your head.
Lakes are gross.
I think the last time I went to the beach was 2008.
That sounds. I was in my first marriage, and we hadn't been married long.
Do you live on the side of Australia where the killer jellyfish are, or is that on the other side?
No, okay. That's in Queensland. You don't want to go to Queensland anyway. It's a bit crazy. I mean, we call it. It's kind of like the Florida of Australia.
Oh,
okay. They got some crazy.
I love that comparison because it's so visual to me.
Well, because the thing is, like,
I've been to Florida,
where I live is Perth, Western Australia. It's the entirety of the, I mean, not the city, but it's the state is the entirety of the west coast of Australia, right?
Okay.
And so we there's been a lot of comparison, I think, to Perth and like California, just the attitude, the type of people. It's quieter and like more of a small town feeling, I think, compared to like LA or whatever. But I just think the people and the attitude and that are more laid back, less high strung, whereas our East Coast, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, is a lot more like it's like the East Coast of the US, like New York and that, where people are much more, I don't want to say high strung, but like there's a different sort of energy.
They've got places to go.
Yes, pretty much.
When you look at the East Coast versus the West Coast in the US, they have very different energies. I've been on both coasts, and they're very, very different. Not in a bad way. They just have different feelings.
Yeah, exactly. Like when we moved to Australia, we were living in Sydney for a while. That's where my sister was born. But my dad's from Perth. Like we live here because my dad's from here. And it is like, it's just a whole different feel, a whole different attitude. The friends I made there as a small child are kind of very different people compared to the friends I made when I was here as a kid and as a teenager. So yeah, it's just, again, I mean, most people go to Sydney and Melbourne and all of that when you visit Australia, which is
Mhm.
great. Like, there's a lot to do. There's obviously the Opera House and things like that. So we don't have much of that here, but if you're into like natural beauty, then come to Perth. Also, we're like, aside from New Zealand, who have like completely eradicated coronavirus, we're probably number 2 with safety.
Right.
So, and how like we have, I don't know,
Isn't
we have
that
like,
nice?
Right.
Yeah, right?
yeah, we
Where I'm in a state where
overall,
it's currently on the rise.
Same.
overall, our entirety of coronavirus cases was like just over 500. I think we have 3 active cases right now in the whole
That
state.
used to be
maybe.
my state. Now it's not.
Yeah, but we
Because
closed
people got
borders
lazy and let down their
immediately.
guard. Yeah.
No, our governor was like, no, we're not. Nobody's allowed in. Not even other like
Right.
state Australians.
Right.
If you're on vacation and you're from WA, come home immediately. You have until midnight tomorrow night.
Wow.
So yeah, and we're still in lockdown from like the rest of Australia.
Right.
But our life is like normal. I go to the gym like 3 times a week. Everything's open, restaurants are open.
Right.
We still have social distancing in that, but nobody really needs to wear a mask or anything.
Right.
The only stuff that hasn't, well, actually, maybe it has now this week. I think this week is the first where stadiums and like groups of up to 60,000 people and stuff
What's
can
that
still
like?
happen.
Wow.
So we're
That's
kind
not
of
happening in my
normal.
state anytime soon. They're actually considering locking us down again.
What's a stadium?
I don't know because I never go, but
Oh, man. No, I mean, considering that I, again, live in Oklahoma where there, in Tulsa, there was just a little rally and people didn't wear, like, I was in Tulsa that same day. Like, so my husband is a really big fan of Mark. I think it's Rebel. I don't know how to say his name. Mark something or other. This like weird musician guy who actually I low-key like, but I would never admit that to my husband because he doesn't even know that I like the same things.
What if he's watching right now?
Right. Well, he's not, because he took the kids down to my in-laws. They're hanging out for the holiday. And I was like, I'm not going, because they're going to the lake. And I'm like, I'm not going to the lake. Y'all better wear masks because you can't come home. Like, I'm very stressed about it. But so we went down or up over to Tulsa for a drive-in concert. That Mark guy had like a concert at a drive-in. It was really cool. We all sat in our cars and had to wear masks, and you could get out for snacks. And he was set up in like a van, but there was a projector. And then he would also get out, like he'd put his mask on and come out and like interact with people. So much fun. My introverted self was like, this is how concerts should be. We should all be in our car. And then you can kind of get, like, I loved it. But I was so stressed.
It would be a lot easier to direct traffic out once you're all done.
Oh my gosh. It was, I loved it so much. But I was stressed being in Tulsa because a certain Cheeto had told people that to not show up to this rally with masks.
Oh gosh,
And
really?
had people sign like waivers. Like, I'm not even joking. This happened. Had people sign waivers so that if they get the Rona, they can't sue. And I was just like, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. So like the whole time I was like, I know this hotel didn't sanitize things. I'm like washing my hands and like using sanitizer and of course wearing masks. So I couldn't really, I didn't even want to like sleep I know that's so ridiculous, but I already have anxiety and I was anxious.
It was just through the roof, yeah.
Oh my gosh. We ended up in an elevator we were on an elevator by ourselves, and then the elevator opened and these people come in, and you knew we knew why they were there. They had the hat and everything. And we had our masks on, and we just kind of like, I definitely was like, oh, and scooted over like really far away. And then another person tried to get in, and the man was like, oh, don't worry, there's plenty of room unless you're social distancing, and like looked at us. And I was just like, get me out of this elevator right now. Like I was so uncomfortable.
See, I'm the kind of person that I would have gotten off the elevator and waited for another one.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
I couldn't do it.
It was just I hated it.
I
And
take the stairs everywhere, so I'm happy that I don't run into this problem.
that's what we should have done, because I was like, this is horrible. This is my nightmare. And then y'all who follow me on Twitter, you know that like I recently had a freak out and went and got tested, and I was negative. But I don't know. I'm just super anxious about all of that. And living in Oklahoma, it's not helping because people do not care. They think it's
People don't care here either, even though our cases are on the rise.
Yeah, ours are too. It's wild.
Because people don't care. They're like, it's our rights. I'm like, I want my right to live. Wear a dang mask. Thank you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Sorry to go on that rant.
It's definitely
anyway.
topical.
Yeah.
Right?
So speaking of the Rona, that's when I really fell in love with Haikyuu. I decided to finally like go and explore the anime, and I binged it all, and I've binged it all like 10 times at this point. Yes, it's a thing. It's a mood. It's a moment. And then I decided to try reading it because I'm like, I need more content. It stops in the middle of the Nationals arc. Like, I need more. I need to read this. And so I got on my Shonen Jump app and I just read for 3 days straight and I finished it. I'm current now.
That is so impressive.
I could not help myself. It was like a compulsion because I
honestly
fell so deep in love with the series.
Yeah, it's such a likable series. The character, I mean, I talk about this all the time in my pickups, but they're just
first
such
Asahi arc. It's that first Asahi arc that is so hard. I bawl like a baby, even though I've seen it 10 times.
See,
like
Suga
it
is
does
my
not have
favorite
any
character.
less impact for me. Who?
Yeah, so Suga is my favorite character.
I love Suga so much.
I mean, I love all of the boys, but
he's so like
just
the
really,
mom of the team. I love him.
But it's not just that. He's the kind of only third year who doesn't play regularly. He's the character who's been there the longest, has been with this team the longest, but he recognizes that he's not as talented or as accomplished as Kageyama. So I find that really interesting, and I'm so happy about what his life is like now.
I know, right?
I know.
Right, okay.
I'm not gonna spoil her.
No, we're not gonna say
that I
anything.
like,
know what
right?
he's talking about.
He's the one with the ponytail.
No,
No.
that's Asahi.
Asahi, okay.
Suga's the setter.
Asahi's the one that looks like a grown
ashy,
man.
the ashy gray hair and the mole.
Oh,
just
okay,
under
okay.
his eye.
I'm so bad with their names, so I'm like, I don't. Yes, okay.
But the thing I really appreciate about Haikyuu, aside from it just being really likable, it being really, it's also a really quick read. I like it's. I mean, chapters are only 19 pages, but they go so quickly. I'm like, how is that? How is that 19 pages?
I'm already done.
When I read it week to week, it takes me like 3 minutes to read, and I'll get upset at myself because I want to. So I reread it like 3 times and cry more. But I will say that I really appreciate, and not to spoil, to specifics, but there's been a time skip in Haikyuu. I think that's a well-known point. And I feel like I really appreciate that the series has allowed the characters to grow past high school and to grow past the ideals of a lot of sports series where everyone's expected to become a professional athlete. It's so much better to see all of these characters that you care about who are very passionate about, their sport in high school now as, 23, 24-year-olds living their life, after high school.
How they're living their life, and it's so
but there's some that are athletes. Obviously, we have characters who are volleyball stars, but we have so many more, like in real life, who aren't. They just they never wanted to be. They loved playing high school or volleyball in high school, but they never had any preconceptions that they were going to become a professional, and have now gone to do medical or gone to be a teacher or gone to do all of these different things, and it's really
There are certain
especially for
characters
one
that I was really
particular.
surprised about too.
There are certain characters that certain main characters
Most of
that
them
I
I
really
wasn't, but there's one in particular that I'm like, wow, I'm surprised by this.
Mm.
I'll talk
I
to you off
think
stream about it
yeah,
later.
yeah. I think if it's the same, if it's the character I think it is, then I'm actually really, 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 really happy that with the direction that they took his character.
Okay.
Which may have been a surprise for a lot of people, but I just his personality it
I'm
suited.
not mad that was
Yeah.
the manga made at all, but I was just very surprised that was the choice.
But
Like
I think
said,
again,
I need to read it. I need to get caught up.
Get on it, girl.
I need to. Well, because
Jump, app it up.
I was watching the anime I started out watching the anime. That's what kind of I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it, because y'all know that I don't really watch that much anime these days. I just don't have, I mean, I have time, but I use my time for other things. So sitting down and watching it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Like, I want to watch more, but I really do want to read it, because I find that although it is a sports series, I think I would be able to read it a little faster than I can watch it. And so I do want to start reading it.
When also, just as an aside, the artwork, the dynamic paneling in Haikyuu is incredible. Like the usage of angles, the usage of sound effects is incomparable to anything else on the market. Honestly, it's really, really artistically
in its own way.
interesting. Yeah,
and I love it.
And for a Jump title, it stands out a lot in that regard. Just aside from the
and I think that's
story
why
and
it's performed so well, is because it does stand out artistically.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to just do it. And I know I said earlier that I don't really do like long. I say that I don't do long series, and yet here I'm like, I have Oku. But I mean,
Oku's only going to be 19 volumes, so it's not that long.
Yeah, that's not long at all. I've got Yona right here, and I've got Full Metal down there.
Speaking of, and I've Yona, got. Ren did ask if, I do. Oh, I have. Where did I put it? I recently rearranged my shelves, but yeah, I do have a good chunk of Yona. I think only up to like 15.
Okay.
15 or so. Like, I haven't started reading it yet, though. But I bought it because I was like, okay, I know I'm going to enjoy this, because enough people who I trust have told me. So I think somebody had like a sale, like a buy one. I don't know. But anyways, I bought a bunch of them. And so this was like the end of last year, I think, is when I bought it. But I haven't started. I'm telling y'all, the clamp thing has just taken.
But the other thing is, I know that you've read Prince Freya.
Oh,
and if you like Prince Freya, you're going to adore Yona.
Right. Side note, it's funny though. One thing I have noticed is, obviously, I have been reading things that I've been reading. I read the things that I get paid to read. Like, if you want me to read something, send me a check. And I will definitely, but no, like, I'm really excited to read Yona. I do want to read it. I want to get done with, like, all I have to do is finish Cardcaptor Sakura and then start Clear Card, and I will be done. I just have to get through it. And I'm kind of here's the thing. Y'all know that Holic is my favorite clamp title of all time.
Same.
And so far, after reading the majority of their series, Holic is the only one that I personally would be like, oh my gosh, you have to read this. Like,
and I can understand that now that I've read the first omnibus. Like, why?
That's been I haven't even read the manga for Holic, but from the clamp media that I've consumed, manga and anime, it is my favorite. It always has been my favorite. And personally, like, Clamp is fine. I have a lot of respect for them. I've said this before, but like, I'm not a fan of theirs necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And
I only
yeah,
pick up the
Holic
ones
has always
that
been
interest
the
me, and
standout.
Holic came so highly recommended that I'm like, I'm gonna try this, and now I want to finish it.
Good, and it's one of those, like, it was one of my earlier series that I had started collecting. So I started reading that around the same time that I was reading like Fruits Basket and all that stuff. So I've followed it for a long time, and sometimes nostalgia can kind of color things. But I have reread it multiple times over the years. Every time I'm just like, I love this so much. And I recently read like the 4 volumes of Holic Ray that we get, which is a follow-up, and I cried. I was like, oh my gosh, I was so just sad. I read Tsubasa solely so that I could get more clarification to Holic, and that's the only reason I would say anyone should read Tsubasa. Get more information about Holic. Like, basically, I stand Holic, and there are other Clamp series that I do enjoy very much, but like, for me, I'm Holic, and then probably Magic Knight Rayearth would be my those would be my top.
I love that that reaction. Ugh, yeah. Those two.
I feel bad, like, and I'm so nervous to do this because I know there are going to be a lot of people who aren't going to like things that I have to say. Because Clamp has some very loyal fans, some stands, and especially Cardcaptor Sakura. I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared of the fans, to be honest.
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Pandora's box. Nothing ever bad came out of that.
Like, I'm kind of nervous, but Holic, it's just so good. It's so. I'd rather reread it than finish Cardcaptor. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking about this.
Honestly, I had to power through it. I got the series from my library and was like, how even from the first volume, I knew that I wasn't gonna like adore it, but I was just like, okay. And then I got to the last omnibus. I was like, I'm just gonna finish it, get it done, and yeah. I mean, Sakura's cute, and I like her brother, and what's his name?
Yes, and Yuki.
Yuki. They're my favorite characters. Yeah, I don't really care about like anything that's going on or what's going. Like, I don't care about the plot. I don't care about anything else. Those 3.
I like the fashion. The outfits are cute. The art is cute. It has a lot. It reminds me. It is reminding me of all the things about Clamp's works I don't like. Certain ways they tend to write their story or structure their storytelling is not great. They have, like, there are just a lot of things, like, I do not. One of the things that I despise the most is when, in order to try to maintain mystery, they'll have a character say, "Oh, you'll find out when the time comes," and it's like, why even say that? Like, that is so.
It reminds me of books. One book series in particular, the Wheel of Time series. There's this phrase that's used over and over and over, and it says, "The wheel weaves as the wheel wills." And I'm like, I'm so sick of hearing this. Just tell me what's gonna happen already.
Yeah, and it's so annoying because they will purpose, like, little things, like they're about to tell the character, like the main character, something, and then they'll get conveniently interrupted, like, which can be funny in some instances, but when you read all of Clamp's works basically back to back and you see the same thing being utilized in, like, for every series, it's like, okay, now, like,
Yeah,
kinda
I
over this.
mangaka, even mangaka groups like Clamp, they have
Mhm.
their things that they
Yes.
enjoy. Like,
Yes.
and you see it over and over and over again.
Mhm.
That's kind of why I had an issue, not an issue, but I didn't, I guess, enjoy as much as everyone else.
Mm.
I married my best friend to shut my parents up
Oh,
because
Uh-huh.
that's by the same mangaka as NTR, I believe.
It's very
And-
different than NTR.
I know they're very different, but there's certain things about that is like, yeah, this is what the creator likes, and it kept reminding me of
Of that.
of that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so
the
like, I'm
girlfriend
not
is
saying
she's super lusty, like,
Mhm.
and later in the book you're like, oh, this is what she likes to draw. This is all she wants to draw.
Mm.
And then
yeah, and I mean,
then you know why she drew NTR Trap, because it's like, oh, that's what she wants.
and more power to creator. Like, make the art you want to see in the
Mhm.
world. I'm not like shaming her, but
Right.
for me, I don't like, it wasn't doing it for me.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And that's kind of where I'm at with Clamp. It's just, and again, like I said, it's probably not a good idea to read them so closely together, because it gets old, after a while, seeing the same things and seeing the same character types.
Yeah, well,
Over
not
and
even that. Same alternate universe versions
Yes.
of the same characters.
Yes.
I'm just like,
And I'm just like, I at first, then it was novel to me. At first, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. But then as I was slogging through Tsubasa, I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here anymore. That took me forever to, like, gosh, I am really just, I need to save my opinions for.
But that was also my issue with Clamp stuff, is like, I don't care enough about Clamp to know all the characters. So all of these Easter eggs for characters from, like, oh yes, they were the protagonists from this series, like, I don't care, and it's just like highlighting a character that doesn't have really any impact in the story at all. It's like, oh, look who's back. I'm like, I don't know who this person is, and I don't care to find out who this person is.
I mentioned at some point I said something about Tsubasa feels like fan fiction. Like, they were just like, you know what? We want to write fan fiction about these characters and put them in different situations, and which is fine. Do you? Again, I think I would have enjoyed it more had I read them like further apart, maybe.
Yeah.
Or even like grew up with all of them, because again, like, I started out with Holic and I imprinted on it. Like, but also, to be fair, it is their best written. It's their best written series, hands down. I feel confident saying that because I've read enough of their works. Like, it's their but it's so good. And I wish that they would stop whatever they're doing and finish Holic Ray so that I can
stop caring about it.
Yeah, because you get to see him and Domeki, they're grown-ups, in Ray. Like, I want to see them continue to be grown-ups, mainly so that I can, like, justify my crush on them. They're adults now, so
speaking of Clamp fan fiction, you need to get into their doujin game when they were writing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure doujin, and JoJo laid an egg, and they raised a weird egg baby.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so creepy.
That's how they started. Clamp was a doujin group, and so they started with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure BL doujin.
It doesn't surprise me at all. Like, when I first heard about that, I was like, oh, so that's why they liked it. That's why they like some of the things they like in these, like, so they're strange. They just have interesting ideas. I mean, but anyway, I just went on a whole rant. Why did y'all let me do that?
Because we agree with you. It's fine.
Oh man. Ugh, I really should save my opinions for the video that I'm supposed to do that I think I'm just stalling, honestly, because I am a little nervous. I'm a little nervous about it.
Just do it. You got this.
Bite the bullet, get
Rip
it
that
done,
Band-Aid
rip the
off.
Band-Aid off.
Yeah, I'm just gonna ugh.
But what have you been reading like this, aside from webcomics
And visual
or have you
novels.
not been reading? Yeah.
It's mostly been those, and then
Mhm.
as you know, news stories are prevalent, news articles, but that's not as fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm reading Moonlight Garden again for the fourth time because I recommended. I recommended it to these two, and then I was like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
and then I was like, oh, and I pulled it up, and I was like, okay, I got to read it again. So we're in the middle of that.
Yeah. I'm going to, I promise.
It's on
And
my
then-
list too.
Speaking of the sale that Legend's having a sale where like the
Yeah.
first few episodes of a couple series are free, but one of the weird ones is the first I think 7 episodes of Lilith 2. I think it's Lilith 2 is free, but if you haven't read the first one, like why are you gonna start the second
Oh.
one? Anyway,
Yeah.
it's weird.
That doesn't
But-
make sense.
Yeah, so that's strange, but I have both of them, so it doesn't matter. But
I think you did that to us as well.
yeah, the VNs. I played Summer's End Hong Kong 1986, which is fantastic. It's by a new studio, Oracle and Bone. Can't wait for their next title. It's basically it's one route. Well, there are 2 endings, but one route.
Mhm.
You have Michelle and Sam, or at least that's their English names, because I think it's easier for them to converse that way, despite the
Mhm.
fact that they have Chinese names. I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm not well informed on Hong Kong sort of culture.
Right.
But they have English names.
Mhm.
And it's just this one story between these 2 people.
Mhm.
There's a pretty big, not big, they're both in their 20s, but there's an
Mhm.
age gap between the 2. And it's just these characters, and you get to see like the romance and the passion, and eventually the lust. You can play it without those scenes in it. There's an adult patch which you can choose to opt in or opt out of, depending on what you're
Asian,
feeling.
are
the
over
mood
here
for.
like it gets thirsty. Excuse me.
Like,
Give us the thirsty.
ooh. Is it something that I could play on the Switch or just on my computer?
It's on Steam, so it's for PC.
Oh, okay. So
I think it's
okay.
PC only.
I will get that then because I use Steam. So
And then I was looking for Yuri VNs because I played that one. I was like, that was
Mhm.
great. So I found another one where it's like, hey, we have like 6 endings. We have like 4 male and 2 female endings. And I was like, so 2 female endings.
right.
But it was really only one because I only liked one of the girls. But
Oh.
you know. Anyway, that was fun. And then I kind of learned through playing that and the other one. And there was another one called Mizuchi, which I played,
Mhm.
which has like a snake goddess girl.
Mhm.
Okay.
Um, and then an immortal like priest person that got poisoned by the snake goddess girl, and so you get to choose between one of those 2. It's complicated.
Okay,
But-
I want you to DM me for all of this.
But I learned through
Not
playing.
that you need another distraction from finishing your clan.
Yeah.
But I learned through playing like because I never really touched VNs before, but I was like, hey, I have the money to spend, and I like Yuri, and these
Mhm.
seem fun, so I went ahead and did that. But the one that had more routes, it feels like because they have to give you space and time to sort of interact with all of these different characters, so it feels like less intimate between each of the individual ones. So I'm kind of at this fence, like, do I want one where it's more like a game where I get like a lot of choices, and I'm like, I just kind of want to watch a story and like
Mhm.
have minor role playing elements involved that
Mhm.
don't really impact anything. Although in Summer's End Hong Kong, the roleplay elements do have an impact if you have the adult patch, depending on how many points you get, determines how many scenes you get to see,
Ooh.
which is kind of interesting. I was like, huh.
But
'Cause I was
there are definitely websites online that you can go to if you want to make sure you get them all, so
Yes.
you answer them all correctly and maximize your score.
Yes, so I was
There
missing
are
some
people
pictures.
who like play them all and like thrive on like making blog posts about it. So like, if
Yeah,
you
so-
want all the scenes, you can get them.
Yes. There's also a way to get it from the actual game files themselves, but we're not gonna. That's complicated for most
We're
people.
not gonna hack game
Yeah.
files today.
Yeah, that's complicated for most people. So, but I noticed I was missing some pictures in the gallery, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I played the whole game. And then I looked, and I was like, oh, this is different. So that was
I want
fun.
to play this.
Yeah, Summer's End is really, really good. Like every aspect of the sort of relationship is done really, really well. Now some people will have like the argument that like, oh, these people don't know each other like for very long, and like they're already, you know, getting down and dirty like by day like 4. But I'm like, you don't.
I read romance novels where they jump into bed very fast. I have no judgment here.
But like, I'm like, I don't think people realize like how quickly people like form friendships and bonds with like strangers. Like it's like it doesn't take very much interaction for someone to be like, oh, I really like this person. I could hang out with this person.
I mean, exactly. Just to like tell on my husband, when we first started dating, we were dating for 2 weeks, and then he told me he loved me, and I was like, sir, it's I don't
just
know
now figured that out.
Like, it's been 2 weeks. Like, I don't even think I don't know if I like you that much. Obviously we ended up married, but
now you're stuck.
Like, oof. No, but I mean, you can definitely like form bonds really quickly with someone, so it doesn't bother me. And again,
with my husband, we did online dating, so we spoke for about 2 weeks before we went on our first date.
Yeah,
but I knew on that first date that he was going to be somebody important in my life.
Yeah, I mean,
whether it was like my new best friend, or which he is, and or like my life partner, like I just wasn't sure what that was at the time. We had a lot in common. We spoke and communicated really well together and got to know each other really quick, and it was the least awkward first date I ever went on. And that's when I'm like, this person's going to be really special and important to me.
Have any of you seen the film Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
No.
I've been meaning to, but then the cinemas closed and I couldn't go see it.
I was lucky enough because this was like before all of like the world ended, so I was able to go see it in a theater. But like one of the things was like these people didn't really know each other. That I'm like, these people have like the other person is the only person this person has been able to see for the past like week. Like they really know each other. But it's really good. I'm
gonna look into that.
There are some spoilers that like it's one of the type of movies that shows like sort of the realities because it's a period piece. As much as I wanted a certain ending, like I understand why it chose to go the way that it did without giving spoilers. But that's a really good film. But yeah, I don't know how I got there. I went from visual novel to Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
I mean,
yes. But I digress.
Like, I think this was because we were talking about the amount of time people know each other.
Yeah.
So for me, like, you can spend 24 hours a day with a person for a week and know way more about them than people you've known for months because you're spending a lot more time with them. So it's just how quickly you accumulate that time you're spending together. Like those 2 weeks my husband and I were talking before we met up for our first date, we were basically in constant contact unless we were sleeping. Like he was even messaging me while he was at work and I was at work, and we were just chatting
have, like,
constantly.
Telepathy going on.
No,
if she did, she wouldn't tell us.
Is that abnormal?
I will say also, like, there's the old adage of like, for the people you want, like, if you're in a relationship, travel with them because then you will know who that person really is.
So
you're stuck.
Yeah, we went on a couple of road trips before we were actually married.
You know what's funny? Sorry, I don't. This is just whenever. So we got married really young. We were 20, and at 20, you're not old enough to do anything. Like you
drive
anything. You can like
and sign contracts.
Like my in-laws, they wanted to send us to Vegas for a honeymoon. We couldn't go because you have to be 21 21, I think, to do
for
anything.
To do fun things.
For the-
And then like
yeah.
and then like 25, I think, to like just be 25 to rent a car, like just ridiculous stuff.
Mhm.
So we went to
Mhm,
Universal, you know, in Orlando, Florida, and that was fun and all. But our first actual real trip together was our 10-year wedding anniversary. We went to Korea, to South Korea. That was our
Nice.
first like real like trip outside of the country where we had to actually like do a whole lot of navigating. We studied Korean together. Well, we both had teachers, but we studied Korean for 2 years before we went. We learned so much about each other after we were married for 10 years, together for 12, but at that point. And I remember like by the end of the trip, I was like, I thought I knew who you were. And I've learned so much. Like we learned so much about each other. We definitely learned that we have very different travel styles, and he also for the first time saw the extent of my anxiety and realized like, oh, she's not fun to travel with unless things are planned for her. So it was a very interesting experience. So I fully believe like even if you know someone for just like a week, if y'all have traveled together and you've been in that kind of situation, I fully believe that you can I guess fall in love or whatever in a short period of time if you're forced to, you know, to do something like that together. Because
if you both come back alive, then you're set free.
then you're good.
Because it's high stress. It's obvious. It's close quarters. You're spending your time almost 24/7 with this person. Hopefully, unless one of you, I don't know, storms out and just abandons the trip. But then at that point, the relationship it's over. Don't try to fix that. And as someone who is not married, doesn't have a partner, so doesn't travel with anyone aside from usually my sister. Like from my parents, like they met when they were both traveling, right? So they met through work, kind of. I mean, they were both at a fashion show in New York, and just happened to be in the same expo hall, like right across from each other. But Dad was in Australia, Mum was in California, and so their entire like beginning of their relationship was them traveling with each other or to each other. And I've told this story before, but my dad proposed at 3 months, and Mum was like, "No, I don't even know. Like we hardly know each other." And so he got afraid, and then waited until Mum 5 years later was like, "You're either proposing to me now, or you're getting married to someone else." So she gave him the ultimatum. But it's for me, and because of their work, and because of that's how their relationship started. We've always traveled. Well, I'm not so much anymore because it's expensive to travel, and I am an adult, and and my sister's an adult.
Now.
Yeah, so you can't travel anyway right now, but it's always been a thing of like, if you can survive with somebody when you're in a foreign country or even in just a different state, you don't have that support system of family or friends or anything around you, then you really get a good idea of like the people you are and whether or not you can handle each other under that high stress situation. And that's something that, I mean, not everybody is suited to travel. I think that, it's no
husband
harm,
is not
no
a
foul.
travel guy.
But at the same time, I do think that it's something that most couples need to try, because I don't know, I've experienced or seen a lot of other people's relationships fall apart from things that could have been noticed a lot earlier if they had actually spent an extended period of time together.
Much harder to hide your serial killer nature when they're with you all the time.
Exactly.
Yes.
Or at least they're 3 girlfriends,
Yeah, that too.
That's hilarious. No, I honestly like I have 2 people that I love to travel with. That's my husband, and then one of my cousins. She's about 9 years older than I am. She's very well traveled. She worked for Microsoft for a long time, and then like she just always had these like really cool jobs that sent her everywhere. I love traveling with her. Basically, I love traveling with people who are very like together and planned. That way I can just wander around like an adult and just be like, wow, this is so cool, like a child. I am that kind of traveler. I'm like,
So you have to travel with your form of a Yoda. You need somebody to
yes,
be your
I
sensei
need,
and
like,
tell you what to do.
yes, I need like a very stern, put together person. I have so many hilarious stories with my cousin of like things that have happened while we're traveling, like me trying to help navigate to a restaurant and then us walking. We were in Brooklyn, walking around in a circle before we figured.
Oh god!
And then I just like fell out. Like she was like, "Girl, what are you doing?" I was like, "I'm so hungry," and it's right there. We walk like it was just.
You would walk past it a bunch of
Yeah,
times.
I have another story about getting lost in Korea. Like I had met a YouTube friend. We met up while I was in Korea. And my husband and we have a friend that we went to college with that is actually from Seoul. And so that week while we were there, he had taken us around and he happened to be with us. And he was like, first of all, who is this girl? And I was like, it's fine. Like we met through the YouTube. And he was like, let me give her my number so that like y'all can call or whatever. I was like, whatever, we're fine. And at that point, my Korean was decent, and so we did our stuff, and then we took a cab to get back to my Airbnb. And I was like just sitting there talking to the cab driver, like just speaking in Korean. I can't tell you what I was saying now, but like, we're just talking. And then he drops us off and he's like, okay, here you go. Totally the right spot, but I have I'm directionally challenged. And so I was like, oh crap, I don't know where we are, but I didn't want to like admit it. And so I was like, come on, girl. So I was, like walking around and she's like, it's hot and she's getting like more and more winded and she's like sweating and I'm like sweating because I'm like, we're lost. This is so embarrassing. And finally she like texted my friend. This is so embarrassing because like we stopped at a Starbucks and then we look out the window and here comes my husband and our friend. Just like they were literally across the street. And they were like, it's right here. Like what? So we had like I had around in like a circle. It was oh my gosh.
The big red sign that says "Go here."
Right.
And it is why you need to have Google Maps up on your phone at all times.
I was because at the time, like we had to have an egg. Well, would have had to. She had a Korean phone, but she didn't know where we were because she lived in what is it?
Not Seoul.
Not Seoul. She lived in yes, in Seoul, but like
did she live in Blues?
Part. It was Itaewon. She lived in Itaewon, which is it's in Seoul, but it's like we were in. I think we were in. Where were we? Were we in Incheon? I don't remember. Anyway, the point is she didn't live in the neighborhood where we were staying. And so she was like, and she doesn't speak any Korean, even though she'd been living there for years. Didn't speak any Korean, so she didn't know. And and you can't just like walk up to strangers. You can't just walk up to strangers in Korea and like
no.
for directions. They will just look at you like, why are
what
you
kind of weird tourist are you? Don't talk to me.
So, like, oh my gosh, I don't want to admit that we're lost because I don't want to scare her. But finally, we just stopped at a Starbucks, and then here they come just across the street. And to this day, I get made fun of because of that. And like that was so embarrassing. But I'm that person. I'm like, well, I don't pay attention, and I'm just here for food. So take me around.
See, Korea's a good destination if you're just here for food, because that's all they do is eat. Like, because my sister and I went to Korea a couple of years ago now, and we were staying with one of her friends, because a lot of my sister's friends are Korean.
Oh, okay.
And so there was kind of like a fight to see who would host us whilst we were in Korea. So we were staying with her family who live in Korea. She actually lives in Korea now as well, but at the time she was living in Australia. Okay. And so we were there a week. We did so much in that week. But they're always like, "Are you hungry? Do you want food? Have some food?" I'm like, we literally just stopped eating like 2 minutes ago. I don't. Please, I'm so much food. I understand you're trying to get us to like experience every Korean cultural like food while in the week we're here, but like there's only so many meals in one day I can have.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. We were there for 2 weeks, and our first week we came into Busan. That's where we started it, and it was just the two of us. It was amazing.
How many zombies did you see?
All of them. We didn't see. Actually, I don't think that was that movie out when we went, because we went in 2016. Was that movie out?
Yeah, I think that movie was out at that point. Yeah, I think so.
I don't remember I don't know if we had seen it yet then. Or maybe we had. I don't remember. Anyway, point is, we were in Busan for our first week, and absolutely amazing. It was definitely like a test of my language skills at the time, because we got into a cab and my husband fell asleep. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to this cab driver. And the thing is that he either spoke Korean or Japanese. And I was like, well, I don't speak Japanese, so I'm just going to have to stumble through Korean. But it was a good little like push, you know? The Busan was amazing. Our Airbnb was like literally right across the street from the beach that we stayed. We didn't stay on Hyundai Beach. We stayed on if you've seen Black Panther, the scene where they filmed in Busan, like that whole area, we were there. Like not when they were filmed, obviously, but that's where we stayed. So like we were just right close to the bridge, and like it was just love Busan. And then we went from Busan to Jeju Island. Love Jeju Island.
I was at Jeju Island.
Oh my gosh,
it's great.
So great. It was I had like my hair was a lot like longer, so it was huge. And I wore it out in like a full-on fro, and like the night
I bet that would be nice.
Oh my gosh. Well, so when we arrived to the little Airbnb or bed and breakfast that we stayed in Jeju, like they spoke English, and they were super sweet, like because they knew it was our anniversary. They had wine for us and all this stuff.
Fun.
But like when we got there, I had my hair like it was longer, so I had it in pigtails, so it was like tame. And then like the next morning, I think I had like washed my hair, but then I didn't have the right product, so I was like, I'm just gonna wear it out a fro. And we walked downstairs, and the lady was like, "Whoa." What? Like what? And she was like, your hair. I was like, oh yeah, it's my hair. And then we went to go get like food, and while we're walking, all of a sudden this car drives by, and these guys like lean out, and they're like, pro. And I was so embarrassed. And I think after that, I was like, I'm going to put it in a ponytail. Like, I was so embarrassed. And then when we got to Seoul, it was hilarious because our friend who was like taking us around, he was like, Aisha, how do you feel like celebrity? And I was like, leave me alone. Cause like we would walk around and people were like looking and like staring, and like I had like Afro puffs, and like older Korean guys were like, oh, yapuda, which is like beautiful. And I was like, oh, kamsahamnida. Run away. And like old ladies were like, oh, like, you know, like touching my skin. Like somebody, like one lady stopped me and was like asking me if my nails were real. All of this in Korean. And so like it was a good practice. It was good practice, but I was just like, I don't.
My parents loved their trips to Brazil when my brother was living there, because my parents are pasty pale like I am. And then my mom, we put really light blonde highlights in her hair to help camouflage her gray hairs that she just wants to cover. And it's funny because every time they would go down, they would assume my parents were like Russian because they were so white. Because we were they were usually going down during the warm months, and so everybody's like, Russian? And they just didn't know what to do with my parents. And so they always just said, thank you, and walked on.
Yeah.
My brother's like, yeah, they're just thinking you're Russian again. It's fine.
There was a big when I was smaller, because here for a vacation, a lot of people go to Bali, so Indonesia, and as a white, relatively blonde, blue-eyed little girl, it's like you hold your parents' hand, or else you are going to be snatched by an Indonesian. Because and even like, and I would be walking as like an 8-year-old just down the street, and people would be touching the top of my head because it's good luck. It's like, oh, good luck, many blessings, and I'm like, okay, that's good. And speaking of embarrassment in Korea, Aisha, nothing will compare to my sister, because, as I said, a lot of her friends are Korean, and before we went, she asked some of her friends, male friends, like ways to say like, oh, this is really delicious in Korean.
Yeah.
And so they told her. And so because when we went during Chuseong, which is like Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Their Chuseok. And so we were with Lisa, our friend, her like her whole family, all her dad's extended family were at the grandma's house and having wonderful meal, just like outside cooked seafood. Oh, it's so good. But my sister wanted to say that it was really good, and she said this phrase, and it was really fun. Her dad, Lisa's dad, who, as I must mention, is a police chief, but he was like already like 10 drinks in. So he just like laughed. And I don't think any of the rest of her family heard, except for Lisa. But she's like, oh my God, no, don't say that. Because it was like, oh, this is fucking delicious. And she's like, I'm never trusting Corey and Tony ever again. Those little, how dare they?
I know how to, because like I would like usually I'm like, oh, 정말 맛있어요, like 정말 맛있어.
Yeah,
well,
no,
맛있어요, but I don't know how to cuss in Korean.
Yeah, no, I mean it was mashiso, but it was like they had the curse in there, and and they're like, yeah, you have to say it like really emphatically and like with a lot of energy, which so she did, and she was like, oh God, boy,
Right.
never trust the boys ever again.
Oh, I would have
and
absolutely
it was fine. Like her dad thought it was hilarious. Her dad also like loved me. He thought that I was like amazing because I was drinking soju with him and like not getting super drunk. Oh, and he kept trying to set me up with like all of the cousins because I was single and still am single. Right. But he's like, oh yeah, this is my nephew, his husband, or his father, really rich man. You can like, like I'm good. Hey.
Thanks.
Hey guy, like nice to meet you. I think his name, like his English name, quote unquote, was Tom. I'm like, and he's just like, oh, don't. And Lisa's like, don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. Don't listen. And I'm like, oh, I mean, I appreciate it, but I think I'm good.
Oh my God. I really want to go back to Korea. Like we had such a good time. We were there for, like I said, like a little over 2 weeks. And I don't know, it was amazing. We had gotten to the point where we had like habitual places that we would go and they would like recognize, which I have to remind myself that like I am Black and that I do stand out in a lot of places. So it's easy for people to remember. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're not remembering me because like they're so good. It's like how many Black people are walking into the store in Busan. So but we just had such a good time, and it was a good bonding moment for us because we had to speak a different language, you know, and we would speak it to each other to kind of keep up with it. And just like it was fun experiences. And also I was doing CrossFit back then, so like I looked really good. And that was a time. But no, I would like to go back to Korea. There's so much that we didn't see that I, you know, would like to, and so much food that we didn't get to eat because I'm obsessed with tteokbokki. We had tteokbokki like and fried chicken, like
yeah, the chicken is so good. Lisa took us to like the most famous chicken place in Incheon, and it was so, oh my god, spicy. Oh, so yummy. I
Man.
loved it so much.
And now y'all have officially made me hungry.
Oh my god, I'm
Sorry.
telling you, Korean fried chicken.
Even if you can find it locally, there's I mean, here we have Korean fried chicken in a couple of different places. And again, because Korean friends are like, yeah, go to this one, not that one. That one's terrible. Go to this one. So if you can find a Korean restaurant full of Koreans, you've got a good spot. Because they are so particular about food and freshness of food and all of that. I mean, people are anyway, but like Koreans especially, they won't even eat leftovers the next day, which is good for us, because when my sister's friend makes food, he's always like, yes, here's all of this food that because it's just him and his share mate, so like they can't eat all this food, and he's like, here's like 2 whole pots of spicy pork, and I'm like, thank you, Tony, I appreciate it.
Oh no, I want Korean food. We have to have Korean food when we were in Tulsa, because there's a place that we like to go to, and we have a Korean place that we go to in a lot of different, because like in the town that we live in, the only Koreans that are here in this town own the donut shop, and so they don't have like a Korean store or a Korean restaurant. So. Oh, fireworks. Oh, sorry. That like I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, people can't count is what that is.
Yeah, well, again, I live in rural Oklahoma. People have been shooting fireworks. I don't even since freaking June 25th. Like they've been shooting those things, and it's really annoying. But the thing that's scary is like you don't know if it's fireworks or if it's somebody outside shooting their gun, because this is the country.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but also like here, when it's like when you hear fireworks, you know it's like professional fireworks. We can't buy fireworks, and also you can't own a gun like as just a normal person, so I never have to worry that someone's getting shot up like 2 streets away.
Oh my gosh, because the thing is like we live in a very small town. It's a very safe, I mean, safe, you know,
relatively safe,
a relatively safe area, but like you'll hear people, like kids will be driving their 4-wheelers, in the street, which is technically illegal, but they do it anyway. Like legit on like the highway, and then people will go to their backyards and like shoot their guns, and it's so country. I mean, like literally, even though we live in town in a neighborhood, somebody has cows in their back. Like
Nice.
Like this is.
I have a chicken in my backyard, so I
have 400 kangaroos just roaming free.
You do have all the kangaroos,
which is basically like cows here, like kangaroos.
Well, it's more like deer. I don't know about.
Oh yeah, because we have like every day. My husband will walk by our bedroom window, and he's like, and I'm like, "What are you looking at?" He's like, "Oh, the deer are here. I can see them." I'm like, "Wow, you're so country." Like, stop. This is the place where, like, during tornado season, if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen what color my husband is. He is Native American. He is Choctaw, but also it's Oklahoma, so white. And they will go outside and watch the sky and I'm like, that's such a Caucasian thing, like Caucasian Oklahoma thing to do, like to sit outside when there's a tornado just to see like where it's going. It's just country. And I'm born and raised here, and I'm country too, just a little bit smarter because I don't sit outside during tornadoes. I hide in the closet. So that's a little backstory, I guess, into my that you didn't ask for.
See, Australia, we don't get tornadoes, we don't get earthquakes, we don't have volcanic eruptions. No, we don't. We have bushfires, that's about it. But those are like
big bugs too.
Last weekend we had 2 big fires going on here.
There's not that many big bugs.
Really?
I mean, I'm also like not. I mean, we have big spiders, but there's those spiders that aren't gonna hurt you. They're just huntsmen. It's
I
the
want 'em.
like.
I don't
But I
care.
say,
It'll
like,
trigger me. No, thank you. Animal Crossing triggers me when it comes to spiders. No, thank
Oh
you.
my gosh, the tarantulas! Oh my gosh, Matt would get so mad because I would play in the middle of the night when he's like asleep,
And all of a sudden you'd scream.
and then like
because
I
of the
would
tarantula.
scream because, and he's like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "The tarantula got me." Like, it's a game. Like, why are you screaming? But they're so scary. They just like they jump at you.
Because
Oh.
literally they attack you.
Mhm.
Huntsmen don't do anything. They just stay on the wall and
Ugh.
have big long legs, and you're like, hey man.
Wait,
It's-
are they
it's
like
the-
daddy long legs like those?
No, I mean they're
Oh.
big and furry, but
Oh,
but they're not as like,
no.
but their bodies, but
Yeah,
their
no,
bodies aren't. Their bodies aren't as like big as a tarantula's. Their
Oh,
legs
I'm-
are longer than the.
Oh, I
the
don't
thing.
like this.
But see, spiders don't freak me out. Snakes, like you can. I don't know. I can handle snakes.
I
You're
don't
not
do
gonna
spiders.
really run
I
into a
don't do
lot of
snakes.
snakes.
I don't do any of it. No creepy
The only animal I'm legitimately like afraid of,
Mhm.
which is and you guys have your like version there as well. Are crocodiles. Like oh my god. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna get near a crocodile because holy shit, dude.
I mean,
no
Crocodile
thanks.
Dundee.
They're big. They're like impossible to kill unless you shotgun them to the face. They will kill you, and they're fast and like a million years old. And I'm like, nope. Even sharks, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Crocodiles,
You
no
can poke
thanks.
a shark
And
in
then
the
I-
eye.
And then I see all these shows from like the swamp, like Louisiana swamp, because we have a bunch of Americans who go after these alligators. I'm like, you guys are crazy. Like, you are actually insane. What is wrong with you people?
It's wild. It is. Again,
See, at least Steve Irwin, Crocodile Hunter, he was like, he knew what he was doing, and he did a lot of good work in like destigmatizing crocodiles. But oh man, I
they
wouldn't.
need to be stigmatized.
He was a mad lad. He's just like
The worst things are like the roaches that fly.
Ooh,
yeah, we don't.
They're big and they fly.
No.
I always see that as like a Florida thing, and I guess a Queensland thing, because it's tropical, and so the bugs are big, and it's humid, and here it's dry. Like it's wet and cold right now because it's winter, but a lot of 70% of the time it's dry and hot, and we are in a desert, right?
Okay.
Utah's a desert. I get it.
Do you guys also have like cave crickets? Do you know what those are?
No,
Like
I don't
mole
know what that
crickets?
is.
I don't know what a mole cricket. It might be the same thing.
Let me.
Anyway, they're big freaking crickets, and like I'm not a short guy, and they get like halfway, if not more, up my body when they jump, and they're big.
No.
See,
No.
Okay, the thing, I went to Costa Rica many a year ago now, and when I was there, because it was a community volunteering, and I was just like out in a really tiny village, and there was a giant like flying cricket thing. It just landed on my shoulder, and I was like, "Oh, hey man!" And I flicked it off, and my the family who was hosting me, the brother, he was like, "Oh my god, you're like so relaxed when that happened."
It is not one of those things.
Okay.
I only know about mole crickets because of Animal Crossing.
They're that's disgusting. Why am I looking at that?
I don't know.
I don't like it.
Insects don't bother me. I'm totally unfazed by insects.
Oh my gosh.
And reptiles. I love reptiles, honestly. Aside from crocodiles, those guys and alligators, they're cousins.
Right.
No thanks.
Yeah,
Don't want to be in a pool with them.
They're
that's the thing, like,
legitimately dangerous.
And you see people in Florida who have a pool who will just have an alligator in their pool. I don't live in that life. That's terrifying.
Absolutely not. No.
Maybe if I lived in a castle with a moat and I needed protection. Then
No.
I feel like a bear would be scarier than like a crocodile or an alligator because they're faster and they can climb.
Yeah, but I don't go anywhere where there's bears, and we don't have bears here,
That's
so I don't have
true.
to worry about it.
I mean,
We
we have
have bears, we have mountain lions or cougars, whatever you want to call
Those
them.
things are scary.
Yeah.
we have coyotes.
We have those as
are
well.
Actually, they will snatch you up if you're not careful. But you're talking to someone. I'm afraid of frogs. So
What?
okay.
Frogs
In my
are
defense,
cute.
okay, no. In my defense, so years ago when I was a kid, I mean, like I said, I grew up in the country, and the place that I grew up. We lived on 40 acres. And so we had like all this land, and there were like multiple ponds. And I used to be this big tomboy. I'd run around with my brothers, and we'd catch crawdads or crawfish, whatever, crawdads.
I think they're
And-
both the same thing.
Yeah. And like we had BB guns, we were shooting BB guns, and just like run around being hoodlums in our yard. And so one year there was this big drought, and frogs like moisture. Okay, like I'm triggering myself. So like I was downstairs in the living room. It was nighttime, nobody else was with me, and I remember like looking up, and I saw a frog on a mirror, and I was like, oh look. And I wasn't afraid of frogs at this point, and I was like, oh, how'd that frog get in here? And then I went back to watching the show, and then I looked up and I saw another frog on the wall, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I look up and I see another one, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So like, I was scared. Like that, I started to get scared because there's like 3 frogs.
They're coming out of the walls.
Yes. And what in the world? And so like, then I got yelled at because I got caught. I wasn't supposed to be up watching TV, so I got yelled at to go to bed. And I was scared because I was like, I don't want to have to walk by these frogs. I don't know where they came from. So then like, I finally just get the courage to like run. Also, I'm scared of the dark, and it was dark, and I was like running, and I run up to my room. And the house that I grew up in, we didn't have central heat and air. We had window units, and anyone who has had a window unit knows that they can leak. Like moisture will come out, and again, it's a drought, and the frogs are looking for moisture. So I get in bed, and I hear, and I look, and there's a little frog, like in between the window and the AC unit, and I had to try to sleep with this thing. I was so terrified that it was going to jump on me while I was asleep. Well, then it doesn't end, because then for the next like week, I kid you not, there were frogs. You could hear them in our drains coming out of like the toilet. It was like an infestation, and like I got to the point I didn't want to take a bath. I didn't want to go to the bathroom because I was so scared.
They're gonna come out of the faucet.
Yes. And to this day, when I see, like, I'm not even kidding. Like, there was one day, like, I think Phineas, my youngest, he was probably like 4. Our cat had brought in a frog, and I would tell you, I got so scared, I took off running and left the baby just standing there. And I thought later, I was like, what if that had been like something poisonous? And I just left my little child right next to the frog. I was so scared.
Tough
And-
love from the very beginning. You don't survive this, you're not surviving my household.
Oh my gosh. I am, to this day, I am scared. Like, my in-laws make fun of me because when we do go, because they live way out in the country, and they have tree frogs. And they will, like, I'll hear them, and they're always like, oh, those aren't frogs, those are crickets. I'm like, girl, I know what a frog sounds like. That's a frog. And if one of them jumps on me, I'm getting in my car and I'm going home. Like, I will never come visit y'all again. So like, I'm terrified of frogs, and I know it's irrational, but I can't do it.
What about toads?
Oh, they're just
Toads are ugly.
They are
Like, I don't care about like frogs. I find frogs extremely cute.
Yeah.
But toads, here we have a big cane toad problem as a endemic species. So they were introduced, and now they've just like taken over. I don't know if they've crossed the West Australian border, maybe way up north. But they are like a major major issue, and they are disgusting looking. Like they're the ugliest animal.
Yeah.
Ew.
I don't know.
But the
Naked
thing,
mole
like-
rats are pretty disgusting.
The thing is,
Mm.
when talking about dangerous animals, none of our animals are like big danger, like bears or mountain lions or
They
anything.
just
Our
poison
biggest,
you so you die slowly and in pain.
pretty much, like our most dangerous animals would be snakes or
Mhm.
certain snakes, and then like some ocean and like the box jellyfish
Yeah.
and blue-ringed octopus and stonefish and
So,
stuff.
If you
Um,
look at a box jellyfish, it kills you, right? Like it's like Medusa.
Yeah, well, their legs are like can get up to like 30 meters long. You don't want
Oh
to
gosh, that's
mess
crazy.
with that. They are like there's man of war jellyfish, there's box jellyfish, but they're all in places that I don't live, so I don't have to worry about it. Again, this is in Queensland. This is in the Florida of Australia, where all the crazy people live, and so they're like the fact that they've survived all this weird rainforest
Mhm.
about to murder you, coral reef animals. I mean, it makes sense they're crazy. Like,
Yeah, that's a lot. I couldn't. I mean, I'm low key agoraphobic, I think, because like it would just like the idea of going outside to deal to
But-
have to even deal with the animal. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I don't.
the thing about the jellyfish is that they only come in certain times. So, like, if you know the seasonal stuff, like people just don't go to the beach during the hottest months of the year because there's
Right.
jellyfish. But like here we don't have really big predator animals, which I think is why kangaroos are so populous. Like we have huge kangaroo population. They're not going like extinct anytime soon.
Right.
But our biggest animals are like kangaroos.
Do you have any emus? Okay.
Yes, yeah, we have emus. I've seen one wild around here. They normally live like way out in the desert.
Are they big enough to where you could ride them?
No, they're not as big as an ostrich. Well, actually, some of them do get pretty big. So
I don't know if they
couldn't,
do
like-
get that big. My dad used to repair sprinkler systems here in Utah where we live. And there was a client of his and they had pet emus. So I've seen them up close.
Also, you guys say it wrong. It's the American pronunciation is totally disgraceful. You say emu like a cow, but it's emu like the letter U. So just a bit of advice there. But yeah, we don't have any large predators. So like aside from crocodiles, which is why I hate crocodiles. But I don't live anywhere where there's crocodiles, so I don't even have to worry about it. But yeah, like most of our, I guess, carnivorous animals, things like dingoes and I guess Tasmanian devils and stuff, are small. Like they're not big.
When I hear dingo, I always think a dingo ate my baby.
Well, yeah, most people do, and
That's
it's
so horrible. I know that's horrible, but
They're not.
well, the thing.
So they're small
they're-
enough to where, like, if you had to engage in combat, you would be successful.
Absolutely. Dingoes actually aren't. It was the whole thing was that dingoes. That whole dingo ate my baby thing is like, well, dingoes don't do that, but they. So it was like murder, and then no, like it was big controversy. But they have proven that this dingo, like a dingo, did take the baby since.
right.
But that's such popular culture that it's a joke now. People.
Which is not even funny. I shouldn't. It shouldn't.
But it is. But dingoes are kind of like, I guess, hyenas or like any small dog. They're kind of scavengers. They're not. They're not going to come at you,
coyote.
try and murder you.
Opportunistic.
Yeah, exactly. So a dingo did take that baby because it was a baby in a campsite, like just sleeping in a tent alone,
It's not funny.
smelling like a baby.
It's like the
And so
stupid seagulls at the beach, where if like you're not paying attention, it'll just come down and snatch your food right out of your
Yes.
hand, and you're like,
yeah, I mean,
darn it.
seagulls are probably our most aggressive animal here, so you don't have much to worry about.
And they're not even afraid of people. They've conditioned themselves.
No, they know that people will give them food. So you just don't have to worry about
chills.
it.
I don't like birds. I have a lot of.
Do you like any animals?
No.
I have to ask.
I mean, I like my cats for the most part. For the most part, I'm just. I don't wish any animal harm, as long as they stay out of my house. They're free.
That's my rule.
Yeah,
if a spider has a death wish, it enters my house. If it's in my yard, I
but
leave it alone.
Yeah, but I don't go around killing like I used to get really upset with my youngest because we would go on walks and he would step on like ants, and I'm like, no, don't step on them. And one day I was like, how would you? I said, would you like for someone to come into your house and step on you? And he was like, no. And I said, then don't step on the ants. They're not in your house. They're just minding their own business, living their best lives. Don't step on ants when we're walking. I'm not a fan of just, of killing animals when they're in there. But if you're in my house, this is Oklahoma.
I don't know. I think exterminating spiders is like a moral good for the world.
Yeah.
The fewer spiders there are, the better off the world is.
We actually we have an exterminator that comes regularly, but my husband is a weirdo, and I guess we had these like huge garden spider. Like there was one huge garden spider that he was
he like cultivating them?
Basically, he saw the one and he was like, I don't want to kill it. And it was behind it was behind our shed, like pretty far across the yard. I don't go over there, so it was fine. I was like, you know what? Fine. You can keep your little weird pet. It had babies, of course. And they're like, and
spiders have so many babies.
Yeah, they have millions of babies.
It was so by the end of that summer, there were like 5 huge. When I say huge, I mean like as big as this mug. I'm not exaggerating. Huge garden spiders, and they're like in different areas, like around our house. And I was like, okay. And the last straw for me was when I opened our back door, our screen door. And then I went out and I came back in, and then my husband was like, I'm so glad you didn't look up because there was one of them like above. And I was like, you know what? No. So I told him to call the exterminator. And when the exterminator came, I said, I know my husband didn't tell you about these spiders because he wants them to be alive, but I need you to take care of them. He was like, yes, ma'am. Because no, we're not I was scared that they were going to end up in my house. And I just couldn't I was so scared to go outside to sit on my back porch because I was scared of those spiders.
He's running an operation down there.
Oh my gosh.
Cutting into his profits.
Really? I was like, what are you doing? I don't know what you're doing with these. It was so...
Did he look like a mad scientist whenever you would talk about him?
He was like obsessed with these spiders. So I was like, you need to move. You need to get out of my house.
The only spider that I have not detested is the spider girl from Monster Musume.
That's fair.
That's hilarious, actually.
That's fair. That is very fair. I'm just, I don't do. Now I'm like looking around, making sure there's no spiders.
It's like a spider toad hybrid thing.
Oh my gosh. I really don't like where this conversation
Let's change the subject then.
It's a good thing that it's like 9:50.
Yeah.
And, some people have places they need to be.
Yes,
so thank everyone who has tuned in to watch this hodgepodge,
chaotic mess.
Indeed. Everyone wants to say their goodbyes.
Bye, guys.
Yeah. Bye everyone.
Have fun.
Thanks for listening to the randomness. And the hot takes as well. We had a bunch of hot takes.
Yeah, that was kind of my fault. I apologize.
That's okay.
No infernos though. Those are left for Australia.
Oh.
Goodbye.